Beating the Raiders is always sweet, but the Chargers won in Jim Harbaugh fashion on Sunday, led by J.K. Dobbins, who was historic in his debut.
You are Locked On Chargers, your daily podcast on the Los Angeles Chargers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, and welcome into a late night edition of the Locked On Chargers podcast. I'm your host, Daniel Wade, joined as always by my co-host, David Droegemeier, and we've been covering the Chargers now for 9 seasons, but this is our 7th year as the host of the Locked On Chargers podcast, bringing you your team every day. Thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen, especially after the first win of the season. To make sure you never miss the show, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. Wow, David, what a game. You were live in person for Jim Harbaugh's first win, watching closely what we're getting into today.
I absolutely was. It was a blast to be there with all of the Chargers family members and being able to meet so many of you guys. Thank you for being so gracious and taking pictures and saying what's up. It was a crazy atmosphere. I'm glad that I was there in person to witness a win to get the Jim Harbaugh era kicked off in style.
Yeah, and they won in very Jim Harbaugh fashion. But this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use the code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play $5. David, the Chargers won, but they didn't look like the same Chargers team that we're used to. And it also didn't look very good at the beginning. I mean, this was looking for a while like it could be a dreadful show to have to bring to our faithful listeners tonight, right? A very, very sloppy start, but the Chargers get off to a really gritty, tough fashion in their first win. I mean, they win 22-10. It's crazy. If I showed you the stat line Justin Herbert put up, you would have a hard time believing that the Chargers won by double digits, but that's exactly what happened. I mean, Justin Herbert only threw the ball 26 times for 144 yards, but the main things I took away from this was the physicality and the grit was definitely there for the Chargers, especially defensively and what they did in short yardage situations, which we'll get to, but also just this team finishing, because it was really bad in the first half. But then the second half, you outscore the Raiders 16-3, and in the fourth quarter alone, you outscore them 13-3. So David, we just kind of saw how this Chargers football team is going to look under Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, we saw the physicality right away. I think we saw it in the run blocking and in the demeanor as well. I really appreciated the way that the receivers were blocking and how they were kind of getting into the mix. Lad McConkey comes to mind. Like, man, he's a firecracker, especially when he's getting in on run blocking. But low scoring, no turnovers, and I feel like we saw some quality adjustments at halftime, because in that first half, it was pretty dreadful. I mean, it was hard to watch. It was not quality football at all, but it was the first 30 minutes of the season. So they were trying to get their bearings about them, get their wits about them. And, after halftime, they were able to kind of lock in a little bit more, make the necessary adjustments and pull away. And I think that's the style of football that Jim Harbaugh wants to deploy. And he has done it to great effectiveness throughout a very long career.
And what did they tell us, right? We're going to run the football. We're going to be physical. We're going to be more balanced on offense. What does balance look like offensively? Well, how about 26 pass attempts and 27 rushing attempts? That's about as balanced as it gets, right? A one snap difference between the two of those aspects. But also just you get to the fourth quarter and you start to pull away. And of course, as a Chargers fan, you're having that kind of dread start to seep into your brain a little bit. They have a 9-point lead in the fourth quarter. How many times have we seen the Chargers blow that, especially with Justin Herbert at quarterback? Way too many times, right? And not only that, but they responded. Up by 9, they give up a field goal, go back down to get a touchdown to separate it even more. It was just so awesome. And I think for a Chargers fan base that has some trust issues, especially late in games, that'll do wonders, right? You saw the Chargers not only keep a lead in the fourth quarter, you saw them expand upon a lead in the fourth quarter. You saw them put the game away. I mean, think about this.
Finish in victory formation.
Finishing victory formation, and what do we hear? What are the things we loved about Jim Harbaugh right away? The fourth quarter finishing period. That's what they did instead of conditioning. It's fourth quarter finishing. They finished this game. I mean, they took it to the Raiders in the fourth quarter. The Raiders smothered them early. They didn't have anything for them in the fourth quarter. This is a fourth quarter team. This is a second half team. And the game ends with you putting a long drive together, running the football. J.K. Dobbins, 61 yards. You go up and score a touchdown. Not content, you go and score a touchdown to push the lead even farther. Then the ball gets back to the Raiders, and what do? Poona Ford, of all people, gets an interception. So to have the offense go put the game away, and then for the defense to really put it on ice with an interception of Gardner Minshew late, I thought was awesome. But man, this was the J.K. Dobbins show. He tore his Achilles a year ago, and he comes out and has a historic performance for the Chargers in week 1. It was so great to see J.K. Dobbins in the special day that he had, honestly putting this offense on his back.
And you got to feel really great for him after what has been a tumultuous start to his career with several major injuries that have zapped, just a large portion of what he's been able to do so far. But what we have seen from J.K. Dobbins is when he's on the field, this guy's damn good. And guess what? He didn't allow an Achilles injury to slow him down, okay? 10 carries, 135 yards, and a touchdown. And I think, he had runs of 46 and 61, showed really good patience and big playability. Yeah, he wasn't able to kind of finish those runs and take it to the house like he said that he should do when the offensive lineman blocks for him. He said he owes it to them to take it to the house. He said, hey, I got to get my conditioning up. So he's kind of making fun of himself. But by all accounts, this was the type of performance that we expected or that we thought that we could see from J.K. Dobbins if he was healthy. And man, that's such a good sign because this is a guy that if you feed him and he gets into that rhythm, he can take over a football game.
And I think we'll see better from Gus Edwards, right? I think we'll see more. This isn't, I think, a huge indictment of him. The run blocking was really, really poor early on. But J.K. Dobbins, if they're both at 100%, if they're both peaking, J.K. Dobbins is the much better back. He's second round pick. The dude has the potential to be one of the best backs in the league, and he absolutely showed it. I said it was historic for a reason. It was the most anyone's ever had in their Chargers debut. This is from Chris Rim. Third most of any player in the first game of the season. Third most rushing yards in team history for a player with 10 carries or less. Let me tell you this. Austin Eckler ran for over 135 times once in 7 years. One time he hit 135
over 135 yards one time?
One time in 7 seasons. J.K. Dobbins just did it in his first game. And the best thing about it, they stuck with it. It didn't work. The first half, they had 10 carries for 26 yards. They ran it for 2.6 yards per carry. They end with 176 yards on 27 carries, a 6.5 yard per carry average. That's how you finish.
That's Greg Roman for you, though, right?
That's sticking with it and the commitment. That's commitment to it right there. And that's what I absolutely loved about it the most. And then as they're pounding it down the Raiders' throat and draining valuable clock towards the end of the game, they come up with a crucial third down. And who does this team go to on a crucial third down? They maybe shouldn't even throw the ball. Some teams wouldn't. They go to the rookie. They go to McConkey. Not only that, they go to him short of the sticks and say, make a play. And the rookie in his first game as a Charger makes 2 defenders miss, makes 2 Raiders just look silly out there, gets into the end zone, puts this game on ice. What a performance by McConkey, David. I mean, in his first game, to show that dog in him and to finish that game the way he did against a division rival, what else can you do to make Chargers fans love you in your debut?
Absolutely nothing. I mean, 5 catches for 39 yards, a long of 11, had 2 first downs of those 5 receptions that he was able to haul in. And you said it. He had a nasty touchdown where he made 2 Raider defenders look absolutely horrible. Where is Boomer when you absolutely need him? Whoop, twice in a row and just waltzed right into the end zone. That was such a beautiful play. And I think what I enjoy, and I talked about this a little bit already, is just I love his demeanor, man. I love the nastiness that he has for a 185-pound wide receiver. Don't tell him he's 185 pounds, right? Don't tell him he's undersized or small. He doesn't care. He's going to mix it up. He is going to go out there and embody that physical type of brand of football that Jim Harbaugh has been trying to instill in this football team since he got here. That is what it looks like right there. And McConkey is making sure that he is going to get that chemistry and he is going to blaze that trail with Justin Herbert going forward.
And he was targeted by Herbert on multiple third downs. And to bring up the blocking, I mean, the game against the Rams in the preseason, you saw it. He went and put a Ram in the dirt and pancaked him in the end zone on a play that wasn't even close to him. He showed him right there. But the other thing is, you don't get carries of 46 in 61 if you don't have wide receivers blocking down the field. It just doesn't happen. Both of those could have been house calls. It doesn't happen unless you have those guys down the field doing what they did. So that's awesome. Ladd was a huge part of that. Quentin Johnston, I thought, had a pretty good first game too. Definitely showed that they knew how to use him a little bit better. But Ladd McConkey already showing in week 1 that he's going to be an invaluable part of this offense. But what about the defense, David? I mean, Jesse Minter's group smothering Gardner Minshew and the Raiders, and led by their dynamic duo, of course, Khalil Mack and Joey Bosa, who put on a show against the Las Vegas Raiders offense and absolutely shut them down. So we're going to talk about that and much more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about PrizePicks, because PrizePicks is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, because unlike other apps, PrizePicks, all you have to do is it's just you against the numbers. You pick 2 to 6 players and more or less on their projections and watch the winnings roll in. It's that simple. And right now, 1 Caleb Williams passing yard gets you 1 win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, only 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. 4 weeks of free W's. Don't miss this deal on PrizePicks, because it's gone when September ends. And right now, you guys can go win 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is also the best way to get action in most states, including California, Texas, and Georgia. So download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL and get $50 instantly when you play $5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play $5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. I also need to tell you guys this episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. And one of the things I want to talk about today is growing, as we've seen this Chargers team do. Definitely some growth today. But for me, it's a lot of things, right? Especially when you have a kid. Like, kids are always learning and growing, but as adults, sometimes we lose that curiosity. What's something you'd like to learn, whether it's gardening, a new language, or maybe how to finally beat your best friend in bowling? Therapy can help you reconnect with your sense of wonder, because your back to school era can come at any age. And for my grandma, one of the things I'm most proud of in my life, my grandma graduated college at 68. After talking with her therapist, she realized that is what she really wanted to do. One of the more proud things. Rest in peace, Grandma Judy, but that was one of the things I've been most proud of anyone in my family. But if you guys want to get into some of that action, if you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. And right now, you can rediscover your curiosity with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/LockedOn today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOn. All right, David, let's get into the defensive side of things. And I mean, if it wasn't Jim Harbaugh and J.K. Dobbins, I don't think there's any way that the defense doesn't start this show because of how good they were in Jesse Minter's debut performance. And it's one of the things we talked about. Like, I did not expect the offense to look as bad as it did early. I didn't. Truly, I didn't. But I didn't see how this Raiders offense was going to have a ton of success against this Chargers defense. And it didn't, right? Like, I didn't see how the Chargers could lose this game. You know, I didn't predict him to only put up 10 points. I think I predicted, 24-13. I thought, hey, that's pretty close. Yeah, I'm thinking about it. That's not
pretty
bad.
close. Yeah, that's pretty close.
But Jesse Minter's defense, yeah, I mean, it balled out, right? Like, it just did. I mean, they only allowed 10 points. They forced 3 turnovers, 4 sacks. The pass rush was there. They held the Raiders to 5 of 14 on 3rd down, 0 of 1 on 4th down. Man, it's harder to have a better debut performance than Jesse Minter's group did, with a lot of moving parts, a lot of new faces, but the same stars that came through on Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, I think Gardner Minshew's numbers are a little bit misleading at 25 of 33 for 257 and a touchdown and an interception, but the Chargers were able to sack him 4 times. They also created 3 turnovers against him, and I loved what they did against the run. They were fantastic against the run, 22 carries for only 71 yards and 3.5 yards per carry. That is fantastic. I mean, we've seen a lot of bad run defenses from the Chargers the last several years, so it's really nice to see, you know, what this, you know, defense is capable of doing at every level. I feel like I like the way that Derwin James was deployed. It didn't feel like he was everywhere, but it still got to see the physical nature of his game. I just feel like the defense was flying around. I mean, I said it, that they were balling out. They were going crazy out there, and I'm excited. I'm excited about what this defense is capable of doing if they keep their stars on the football field.
Yeah, and like the run defense, hats off to everyone, right? The defensive line played so great, and we had no idea what to expect from that unit. The linebackers played awesome, continuing kind of what we thought we were going to see from that group with how impressive they were in training camp and in the preseason. But to me, it's not just the run defense, it's the run defense in short yardage situations. It was this team bowing up when they needed to, when they had to get physical, when they had to not give an inch, they didn't. And I thought that was just super impressive, and I think the impact in this game was so relevant, because look at it like this. They were so good in short yardage in the first half. They had a play where they got 9 yards on first down, right? 2nd down and 1, 3rd down and 1. The Chargers stuffed them, turned into a punt, right? Later on, separate drive, gets to a 4th and 1 on their own side of the field, their own 40. Antonio Pierce decides to go for it. What happens? He gets absolutely dropped in the backfield, does Zamir White, and they stuffed it and easily, right? He wasn't even close. There was no air in that situation at all. They absolutely shut it down. Then you go to the second half. Huge moment in this game. The Raiders on the Chargers side of the field have a decision. 4th and 1. They're down. Chargers offense hasn't played great today, right? They decide to punt it. And I was shocked. I truly was.
Too.
I was shocked. And you can't tell me that doesn't have something to do with those earlier situations, right? So what they did in the first half, even, in a game that was tight, and they kind of had to put the team on their back in the first half, they got those stops in those short yardage situations, and it made Antonio Pierce absolutely crumble in a big moment. And I think that was so huge for this defense.
That was one of the turning points of the game right there. I mean, that was probably one of the last chances that the Raiders had to get back in the football game. But because the Chargers were so good on those short yardage situations and stuffing them and getting tackles for loss and just not relenting an inch, that had to factor into the calculus of Antonio Pierce making that decision. He's like, well, man, I just don't trust my offense right now to go get those short yardage situations. And how could he, right?
Yeah.
How could he actually trust his offense to do that when they hadn't done it all day long? And Jesse Minter's defense was stoning them every single chance that they were put in that situation. That has to do with it. That's a huge part of it. The Chargers defense showing out, and I love it. That's something we saw in the preseason too. Like, they were really good in those short yardage
goal line
situations.
stands.
The goal line stands, that has carried over into week 1.
Absolutely it has. And I think this is the other thing too. This defense played better than the sum of its parts, man.
Yeah.
Like it felt like the talent on this defense was getting maximized in this game. It's something every defensive coordinator and defensive mind says they're going to do, but something so few of them can do. And it's week 1. It has to be continued. It has to be replicated. And they have to be able to keep it going. But like Brandon Staley's defense in 3 years gave up 10 points or less 4 times, right? These are the quarterbacks. Baker Mayfield after he'd been with the Rams for 3 days. Zach Wilson because Aaron Rodgers got hurt last year. Nick Foles because Matt Ryan got benched that year. And Bailey Zappi in the worst New England Patriots offense I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Gardner Minshew, probably edges those guys out in those situations.
Sure,
I mean, it's
definitely.
still Gardner Minshew, right? But Aiden O'Connell put up 63 on this team last year. So you can miss me with, just the Gardner Minshew part of it. Obviously, that fumble, though, was hilarious. But the main guy that, just jumped off the screen to me, David, was Joey Bosa. And it's so awesome to see because we know how dominant he was in the offseason, just how good he looked coming into this year. He was an absolute madman on Sunday. He was excellent. He looked like maybe the best I've ever seen him, honestly.
That's the Joey Bosa that we've all been just hoping to stay on the football field. He was a man possessed in this game. 7 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, a forced fumble that he got from behind, knocked the ball out.
Great
the Chargers
hustle.
got that ball back.
Super
Set
good
a
hustle.
very physical edge as well in the running game. Like he that's what I'm saying, and that's what I've been saying is Joey Bosa is a complete edge defender. He is one of the best in the league when he's on the field. I don't care what anybody says. The proof is in the film. You go and put it on and tell me that there is many other people that are as dominant and as complete of an edge player as Joey Bosa is when he's on. He was on today, and the Chargers needed it, and he showed up in a major way.
Yeah, and it was just how the plays happened, right? He's put up better sack numbers in a game, right?
Sure.
He's had better stats in a game for sure. But it was like the fumble that he forced, right? Chasing and running back down from behind. Then you look at also, right, tripping Gardner Minshew up early in the game with a ton of room to run on 3rd down. Gets the stop there. The first 3rd and 1 of the game, I knew he was going to have a game because he grabbed that running back and slammed him onto the turf and said and was demonstrative about it. And I think if he's channeling it in that way, that's the best version of Joey Bosa. You need him to be a little bit wound up. You need him to be a little bit angry when he's out there. But I also, and it's about sustainability. It's about doing it, right? Even in late in the game, looked like, maybe something happened with his back. Started reaching for his back in one of the last drives for the Raiders, so we'll see what happens with that. Either way, right? The other part of this is that Khalil Mack shouldn't get, forgotten in this, man.
No, not at all.
1.5 sacks, 2 quarterback hits, a batted ball at the line of scrimmage that turned
led
into
to
an
the
interception.
NT. Yeah.
Picked up the fumble that Gardner Minshew threw to no one of the funniest fumbles we're going to see all season. But man, like, there's very few people in the world I would want to try to tackle with a full head of steam beside, like, other than Khalil Mack. Like, I don't know what the list looks like. I haven't fully thought it out, but like very, very, very few, right?
Well,
like,
and he had a grown man sack too, where he literally pushed the left tackle into Gardner Minshew.
Colton Miller too. I mean,
a
really, really good tackle, right?
Yeah.
But I think also, David, just they were able to stay fresh, right? They have a better depth now that they don't mind putting in. That's not such a huge drop off that they can't get by with it. They had a different kind of way of deploying them, and those guys looked awesome. This team has to be a team that leans on this pass rush, and they did that, and it turned into turnovers, right? It turned into the Chargers getting off the field, and really they put the defense on their back and was one of the reasons the Chargers had one of the more dominant defensive performances we've seen over the last several years. But it wasn't all good. Justin Herbert, not a great game by him, and just really the rest of the entire offense in general was so sloppy in the first half. They have to get off to better starts, but the good news is they're going to have time to make adjustments, and Jim Harbaugh says they never have better adjustments than from week 1 to week 2. So we're getting into all that and more in today's Locked On Chargers podcast. First, I need to tell you guys about Game Time, because Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace where you can get all of the tickets to any kind of event that you're going to, like David going to SoFi Stadium to see Jim Harbaugh's first win as Chargers head coach. But if you're doing anything, you have to go check out Game Time, because with Game Time, you get the Game Time guarantee. And if you want to get good tickets to something, you want to make sure you're getting the best price. And right now, Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier than before. Game Time Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals, great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets, and they have all-in pricing that you can toggle, so there's no surprises at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply, but again, create an account, redeem the code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. What time is it? Game time. All right, David, well, we have to talk about the bad parts of this game, too, because like I said before, like there was parts of today's game where I was absolutely dreading this show. And I'm like, man, like what a underwhelming start to the Jim Harbaugh era, because it was so sluggish offensively. David's like, oh, my God, I'm going to drive for 7 hours today and have to talk about this game. But they turned it around, and they were a second half team like we talked about. But thank you guys, as always, for making us your first listen, especially after a game like this. It's so fun for us to be here with you guys. For your second listen, make sure to check out the new Locked On NFL. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, you get the madman Tyler Rowland kicking off your mornings with a double shot of NFL Espresso, and then stop by with my guy Barbershop with the Tony Wiggins experience. Tony the Barber Wiggins, one of the best in the business, one of the best on the network, as they join all the other local experts to give you the best analysis you're going to find. But let's get to Justin Herbert, David, because obviously he is an elite player, right? But he didn't necessarily look like that on Sunday. And it's easy, easy enough to say that. Obviously, there was a couple drops in there. They should have looked a little bit better than it ended up with. But at the end of the day, it's 17 for 26, 144 yards, 1 touchdown, a 92.5 passer rating. So I think the big thing here, obviously, he played a clean game, never put one ball in harm's way. There was never even an almost intercepted ball in this game. Really nothing there. At the same time, it definitely felt to me like he was shaking off some rust. Like this was a shaking off rust situation for sure.
I agree as well. I think Justin definitely missed a couple of throws out there. Felt like he was a little bit uncomfortable. And I think he's got some time to sharpen up, but he definitely wasn't his best. It wasn't his best performance. But I have one thing to say about that. How many games in the past would the Chargers have won with Justin Herbert throwing for 144 passing yards? I don't think there's very many examples that you can bring up to me to show me the games that he would have won with that stat line. That is the difference between what this team looks like now and what it has looked like in the past.
I mean, that's the whole point, right? Like that's the whole point of going and hiring someone like Jim Harbaugh. Like, that you're hiring Jim Harbaugh and he's not going to be, Ben Johnson or any of these. Like, you're not going to get a high flying offense with Jim Harbaugh. He's going to come in and you're going to play the way Jim Harbaugh teams play, which I do think is not always going to be as balanced as it is today. They're going to have to lean on Justin Herbert more in the future against better teams. And let's be honest, he's going to have to be better. So yes, you get credit as an organization. This is why you did it, so that you didn't have to have Justin Herbert play Superman every Sunday. You didn't need him to be perfect. Like, think about that Vikings game, right? Last season. He had to be borderline perfect and flawless in that game. They won in a one-score fashion with Nick Niemann, basically forcing an interception on the last play of the game in the end zone. Like, he was perfect, and it was still a really close game. So he hasn't taken a live snap since December 10th, right? He missed time in training camp. He hasn't had really any time at all to develop a legitimate chemistry with live bullets coming at him with these receivers. The other thing is the offensive line for a huge portion of this game was not giving him a chance. So the fact that he was able to escape from situations and only get sacked one time in this game is a riddle with how much pressure he was facing early. That doesn't make any sense at all. And also be able to, make plays when he had to, keep the ball out of harm's way. I'm not super concerned about this, right? The sack avoidance, handling the pressure, still also made some incredible throws in this game too, right? I think we also could take those for granted a little bit, but like there's a lot of things that have to get fixed going forward, right? And I think it starts with just getting off to a much better start, because the offense was excruciating to watch in the first half. 83 total yards, 0 for 7 on third downs, 26 rushing yards, and the 6 points that they had were directly because of a turnover on downs forced by the Chargers defense, and also the fumble the Chargers defense they got and put into field goal range already. They didn't have to do much for those 6 points. So David, it starts there. There's a laundry list of things that have to be better for the Chargers as they start to get some of these better teams down the road. But I think it starts there offensively. It has to get off quicker.
Yeah, no question about it. I did not like their efficiency on the third downs early on in the football game. I also did not like their production in the red zone as well. I thought that was definitely
the penalties,
lacking.
David. Like, that was so sloppy
penalties
early.
is the biggest part. I mean, Will Dissly, I think, had 5 penalties called on him alone.
He had 3 in the first quarter alone. I know Eric Tomlinson had another one as well. I mean, it was very, very bad. So many drives, especially with this offense. This is not an offense you want trying to overcome 2nd and 15. It's just not.
It's not built to
but
do
those
that.
Penalties were huge. Like, it totally killed everything in the first half.
Yeah, you can't have that. And hey, maybe we'll chalk it up to week 1 and, still trying to get things, comfortable out there. But that's a lot of penalties to overcome. 7 penalties for 50 yards. Like, they definitely took the Chargers out of a couple of drives because of those penalties. Those hurt. They kill you. I mean, you going back 5-10 yards, that you're not in an offense that's really designed to dig you out of those holes. So let's hope that's an anomaly and not something that we see moving forward.
Well, and I thought the interior of the offensive line really, really struggled. And this is like such a good front that they went up against. They went up against Christian Wilkins and Max Crosby. Those are, 2 premier players at their position. This is a tough test. The Raiders did not respect the Chargers skill position players. They were aggressive. They blitzed heavy early on, and the Chargers had a hard time picking up stunts. The chemistry was not there. And what did I say before the season started? I said, listen, it's great that all these guys are healthy. There was parts of the Chargers offensive line that was missed time basically the entirety of training camp. The time that you had these 5 dudes actually together was very, very little. And I think the most impressive thing was just how much they improved in the second half, because we talked about those penalties. I don't remember penalties in the second half offensively. I can't think of a single one. It got better as the game went on. They were a second half team in more ways than one, but that offensive line, I thought, improved dramatically throughout the course of the game. I still think, Zion Johnson had some bad moments. Like, there's a chance that it's not as good as we want it to be, but I think we saw a glimpse of what it could be in the second half there. And I think the nice thing is, hey, you have the Raiders, you got it done. It's always better to learn from your mistakes after you win a game than after lose a game and learn that lesson the hard way. Now they get a chance to go forward, to evolve, to adapt. And I think the biggest thing now is now they know what they're working with the live bullets, these coaching staff, especially Greg Roman. And I think that's the big thing you have to think about too, is just how this team makes adjustments going forward. And Jim Harbaugh talked about it in his post-game press conference, saying going from week 1 to week 2, I think that's where you can make the most amount of progress across the entire season in a 1-week period. So we'll be really focused, laser focused on getting better this week. And I think it's a huge point, David, because now they have film on themselves. They have 0 film of this team with live bullets coming at them until now. So now all these things have to happen going into week 2.
Yep. And we saw them, take the film in the preseason and work upon that and get better. And I think we're going to see it again after week 1, where they're able to see them in a real game against, another professional football team and get all the information that they need to be able to get the coaching points to make the necessary adjustments to make a big leap in week 2 and hopefully carry that into the much tougher stretch of your season after the Panthers game.
And I think the great thing about this, in believing that they're going to make adjustments from one week to the next, is we saw them make adjustments from one half to the next, right? The offense scored more in the first half or in the second half than they did in the first half. The defense allowed less points in the second half than they did in the first half. We saw the adjustments in this game. And like, how many times have we screamed from the mountaintops about, halftime adjustments and figuring out and not trying to go do the same thing
Every
and
game.
having the same results? Like, it was Groundhog's Day with that kind of thing. So to see that, I think, was awesome. But now Greg Roman has to adjust, and he has to evolve, and it has to get better offensively. Obviously, the run game and sticking with it, it ended up popping, and it paid off. It has to look better. And I think that there's a lot to get into tomorrow for like the buy or sell day. I mean, did we learn that Joe Alt was for real in his performance against Max Crosby? Should we be worried about wide receiver 1 Josh Palmer, who was basically invisible in this game and dropped a touchdown pass in this game, right? So much more to get into, but there's one thing that the bottom line for me is great sloppy win, great resilience, great toughness, grittiness in this game to pull it off. Grittiness to have this game not end up like we saw so many bad games end up in years past for the Chargers. It's going to take a little while to get over that. But this team has to get better if they want to be a playoff team. Simple as that. And they're going to have another week next week against Carolina Panthers, who got drubbed 47-10 in week 1. Whew. You can't overlook it, right? You can't overlook it, and it can't be stressed enough. Going on that kind of road trip is not easy. But we're going to need to see some adjustments then. And we're going to see them have to beat the brakes off the Panthers and continue to stack these kind of wins on top of each other before we know for sure what this team can be and how seriously we should take them as contenders in 2024. But make sure you guys are back here for buy or sell tomorrow when we get into a lot of that. And to make sure you don't miss it, go subscribe or follow for free on the Locked On Chargers YouTube channel and listen wherever you get your podcast from. You can also find the show every day on all of our social media. You can find David waving goodbye to Raiders fans at DroTalkSD. You can also find me on Twitter at Dan Talk Sports and the show's page at Locked On LAC. You can find us on Instagram at Locked On Chargers and our Locked On Chargers Facebook page. So can't wait to get you guys involved with tomorrow's show. First week of real in-game shows. I'm very, very excited about that. Oh, and we have Brendan Rice coming on the show on Wednesday. So it's going to be a huge week, but this was a huge win and a huge start for the Jim Harbaugh era. I'm excited. I think this showed us a lot about what this team's culture is, what their identity is. I think we saw all of that. So I can't wait to get back into it tomorrow. But until then, guys, take it easy and go Bolts.